American Top 40.
We're coming to you from Hollywood. Here's another of our 4 debut songs. This one is the first American hit for an Englishman originally from the town of Southampton. His name is Howard Jones, and he debuts at number 38 with a new song called New Song. Written and sung by Howard Jones, an Englishman with his first chart single in the USA, debuting this week at number 38, a song called New Song.
American Top 40, Top 40.
Now we're up to one of the most unusual pop music acts that we've ever heard of. I'm talking about 29-year-old Englishman Howard Jones. In the studio, Howard is a one-man band, plays all kinds of synthesizers and keyboards. Now that by itself is not so unusual. And Howard Jones regularly performs live as a one-man band. He has no backing musicians for any kind of support. But on stage, his act includes a second man. Howard is accompanied for part of the concert by a man who doesn't play a single instrument and doesn't utter a single word. The man does pantomime. He's 28-year-old Jed Hoyle, and he's been working with Howard for more than a year now. Unlike the typical mime, Jed doesn't wear white face makeup and a black costume. In fact, you never know what he's going to wear on stage. He may paint his shaved head white with black stripes, and then wear chains around his upper body. Or he might just wear trousers, a trench coat, a shirt, a bow tie, and dark glasses. Here's a description of the way it went at a recent show in Los Angeles by Howard Jones and Jed Hoyle. Howard ran back and forth from behind his wall of programmed synthesizers and keyboards. He danced and sang all over the stage. Jed came out for about 5 songs. He looked like a man divided right down the middle. One half of him was dressed like a punk rocker. The other half was dressed in a tuxedo. Howard Jones and Jed Hoyle. Definitely one of the strangest looking pairs on the pop concert scene. Howard Jones' second American hit is at number 33 this week on AT40. Here he is with What Is Love. Englishman Howard Jones on American Top 40, third consecutive week at number 33 in the countdown with What Is Love.
Beast of the Hits is ranked by Billboard magazine. For Casey Kasem, I'm Charlie Van Dyke. Now, we're up to the big hit Things Can Only Get Better by the Englishman who says he got his recording contract because of a devious promotion. He's 30-year-old singer and keyboardist Howard Jones. Here's his story. Around his home in the English town of High Wycombe, Howard used to play his synthesizers in one-man shows at small clubs and pubs. Well, a regular customer at one of the pubs was a young woman named Jan Smith. She took a fancy to Howard, and he took a fancy to her. Love bloomed like wildflowers in an English meadow. Jan became Howard's manager, and then his wife. Together, they came up with a wild promotion idea. They started publishing a phony fan magazine devoted exclusively to Howard. A magazine that gave its readers the impression that Howard Jones was a popular artist with thousands of fans. Jan was the editor and publisher and distributed the magazine free at Howard's shows. Howard says it worked. He began to gain a real following, real fans. And that attracted the attention of the record labels. And eventually, Howard Jones was signed to a recording contract. And he says it was all because of a phony fan club and phony magazine. Well, these days, Howard Jones has a lot of authentic fans, and they've made his current single his first top 10 hit. This week, it's at number 16 on American Top 40. Here's Howard Jones, and Things Can Only Get Better. Falling 7 notches to number 16, Things Can Only Get Better by Englishman Howard Jones, one of 16 British or part British acts in this week's survey.
We're coming to you from Hollywood. Here now is the latest hit by a man who understands the meaning of the old expression, if you've got a lemon, make lemonade. Not long ago, Englishman Howard Jones had to perform a show in Ottawa, the Canadian capital, while he was suffering from a severe sore throat. He could have canceled the concert. Instead, he explained his problem to the audience and asked them to sing along with him to help his voice out. So they did. His fans just loved it. Howard says it turned out to be one of the best shows ever, and that he might try having people sing along with him even when he doesn't have a sore throat. This week, Howard Jones is at number 26 in our survey with Life in One Day. Howard Jones peaked last week at number 19. 7th week in the countdown, he falls to 26 in our survey with Life in One Day.
American
The numbers get smaller, the hits get bigger. Now on American Top 40, we're up to the hit by an English pop star who just 3 years ago was earning his living in a very different kind of business. Howard Jones and his wife Jan were selling fruits and vegetables out of a beat-up old van. Howard says he hated it so much that he used to hide at the front of the van while Jan waited on customers round back. In Howard's words, I hated it more than anything I've ever done. I knew I should be working on my songs and music, and I was stuck in this van. Well, Howard and Jan both got unstuck, but it took a bad break to get them there. Here's how it happened. One day, while the two of them were selling vegetables and fruits, suddenly a car crashed into their van. Jan got trapped underneath the vehicle, and her back was seriously injured. Jan's okay now, but back then she was awarded 3,000 pounds, about $5,000, as compensation for her injury. But instead of taking that cash and plugging it back into their vegetable van, Howard and Jan invested in another career, music. They used the money to buy musical instruments for Howard, who is now known as a wizard on the synthesizer and one of Britain's brightest pop stars. He now has his 5th Top 40 hit, and it's making a big dent into the top 10. Up a notch to number 5 this week. Here's Howard Jones and No One Is to Blame. Howard Jones on American Top 40. He wrote it and he sang it. His song is No One Is to Blame. Hello again, and welcome to American Top 40. I'm Casey Kasem, and I'm all set to count down the biggest hits in the USA. First off, I want to say thank you to Charlie Van Dyke for sitting in for me last week while I was in New York City cheering on the Great Peace March. Howard Jones fills one of those vacated spots with a debut song from the album 1 to 1. Howard's had 6 top 40 hits now, but at one time he'd completely given up on music. When he was 19, he says he became disillusioned while he was studying music in England. But later, something happened. He discovered the synthesizer, and he fell in love with music all over again. His close personal relationship with the Top 40 continues. His latest single debuts at number 39. You Know I Love You, Don't You? Englishman Howard Jones. We just heard from him last July with his last hit, No One Is to Blame, when it peaked at number 4. We're heading into the second hour of a special edition of American Top 40, the 40 top newcomers of the 80s, the decade's biggest new faces, the hottest new groups, duos, and solo stars. And on we go.
Number 30.
Here's an English singer, songwriter, and keyboard wizard who started out as a one-man band. Just him and his bank of computerized keyboards. He's Howard Jones. He's now had 6 top 40 hits. 2 of them went top 10, which places him at number 30 among our top newcomers of the 80s. Here's Howard Jones with his 1985 hit, Things Can Only Get Better. Howard Jones and Things Can Only Get Better, his 1985 hit. Howard's one of 5 solo men who are newcomers. He's at number 30.
American Top 40.
From Hollywood, it's a Father's Day edition of American Top 40. I'm Shadow Stevens. I call my dad. You call yours? Talk to a musician. I bet you tell you that a drastic change can give you a whole new perspective. Listen to the story of this next artist. For years, he was the English keyboard king. His concerts were totally and utterly electronic. Banks of keyboards and electrified percussion and synchronized lights, all that stuff. But he spent the last few months doing scaled-down acoustic tours. Howard Jones says that's changed everything. He's loved the variety of acoustic shows and the diversity of his audiences. His new album, In the Running, isn't all acoustic, but it's definitely different from what Howard's done in the past. He says most of the songs are very introspective and cover topics like family, the environment, and relationships. And when Howard looked and listened back to what he had, he realized there was a melancholy edge to everything. So he wrote one last song. He says it was an inspiration after an album of basically sad songs. I wanted it to be a shot in the arm for both me and the listener. Howard's last song for the album is its first hit at 34 at Lift Me Up. Howard Jones is from a little English town called High Wycombe, England. He slipped 6 this week from 28 to 34 with Lift Me Up.